Rachel Reeves' budget is unravelling in plain sight. I'm not just talking about the fact that almost all the ideas that she has thrown out so far have very clearly failed to attract any form of support. Her own MPs, the financial press, people, interest groups, all of them have said whatever she has proposed makes no sense at all. And in almost every case, they're right, because she's done absolutely everything except talk about taxing the wealthy more. But I'm not talking about that issue at all in this video. I'm talking about the fact that a budget is based upon a set of assumptions. Assumptions about how the world will be and how it will be managed. And my suggestion is that as we face an imminent financial crisis, every one of the assumptions that she has put in place will probably fail within weeks at most and months at the latest.
Good day to you all and welcome back to the British Report. If you thought the only thing moving faster than a London cabbie through a red light was the speed of a government U-turn, then buckle up. We have just witnessed a moment of pure, unadulterated television gold. A news host has not just questioned the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. They have effectively dismantled her entire economic strategy in a live exchange so awkward it made a school disco look like a state banquet. We are talking about the taxi tax fiasco, a policy that was supposed to fill a black hole but has instead left the Treasury staring into a void of its own making. Uber has just performed a digital vanishing act that has left the Chancellor red-faced and the taxpayer wondering if anyone in number 11 actually knows how a smartphone app works. Quick favour, if you are loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It is free. It takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show. Let us set the scene for this absolute car crash of a policy. Back in November, Rachel Reeves stood at the dispatch box with the air of a headmistress about to balance the school books. She announced she was closing a niche tax loophole to force private hire giants like Uber and Bolt to pay 20% VAT on their full fares. Currently, these companies only pay VAT on the commission they take from a journey, a tiny fraction of what you actually pay. Reeves promised this would raise a cool £700 million a year to help cut waiting lists and debt. It was the perfect tax the big tech soundbite, but there is a reason they call it fast-moving tech. Just days before the law was set to kick in this January 2026, Uber pulled a hold my beer move. They didn't just accept the tax, they rewrote their entire relationship with their drivers. Under a new agency model contract outside of London, Uber is no longer the supplier of the ride. Instead, they are just a booking agent. This shifts the VAT responsibility from the multi-billion-pound company directly onto the individual drivers. And here is the punchline. Since most drivers earn way below the £90,000 VAT threshold, the tax simply disappears into thin air. Reeves wanted a feast. Uber has left her with a plate of crumbs, but it wasn't just the contract change that stung. It was the live interrogation where the Iron Chancellor was met with the cold, hard reality of her own incompetence.
Very, very rarely go out. In fact, we just don't ever go out. And on our way home, we got a taxi, and our taxi driver was from Iraq. He's lived here for 24 years, and he has 3 children. He rents a house and he works 2 jobs. His wife works 2 jobs, and his second job is being a taxi driver. And he was very eloquently explaining to me what he thought about Rachel Reeves adding VAT onto taxis. And this comes much deeper than it's a night out. This goes way deeper than there's going to be 20% on your taxi from a way home. And the reason this goes deeper is because taxis are not just the fun bus. Taxis are for so many people a lifeline. So for the elderly who need hospital appointments, for the disabled who need to go about their daily lives, for children who live in remote areas and need to get to schools, for people that don't want to drink and drive, for people that don't own a car, for people that need to use a taxi to get to business meetings, for people that need to use a taxi because they don't have any other form of transport. You know, all of these things for cities and towns that want to reduce cars coming into the cities and towns, so we'll use taxis, and so there will be areas where you can get a taxi but you can't drive yourself, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Yet here we are, we're going to put 20% on it. Now what's that going to do? You ask your local black cabbie, you get in a black cab today and you ask them what they think this is going to do. I tell you what it will do. It will decimate the country. Because whilst Rachel Reeves is seeing it as just another way to tax people, what it actually is removing a lifeline for people, removing an industry, removing one of our much loved heritages, which is the knowledge. I mean, the London cab, they're expensive at the best of times. You now want to add 20% on it? People just don't have the money. It is not difficult. She is scrabbling around trying to see which business she can rape of its money and put into her treasury so that she can spaff it on the interest of the loans that she's taken without your or mine permission. Absolutely not. They said spending would be 9.2 billion. It's 100 billion. And we didn't vote for that. Nobody voted for that. I tell you why I know nobody voted for that, because they didn't tell us that's what it would be. There's a massive difference. They have lied every step of the way, and to get themselves out of their lies, you know, like when kids get themselves out of lies, so they tell another one, and then they tell another one, and then they tell another one, and then they can't remember what they lied about in the first place. But because you're an adult, you sit down and say to them, right, look, let's just stop.
The news host didn't hold back, pointing out that the Treasury is now expected to miss out on hundreds of millions of pounds of the very revenue Reeves had already mentally spent. The exchange was humiliating because it highlighted a fundamental Whitehall weirdness, the belief that you can impose 20th century tax rules on a 21st century algorithm without the algorithm fighting back. The host asked quite rightly why the government didn't see this coming, given that Uber had used this exact model before. Reeves tried to pivot to the fairness argument, claiming this would benefit everyday cabbies, but the host wasn't having it. They pointed out that the only people genuinely affected are the passengers in London, where Transport for London rules prevent this agency model, so if you are in the capital, your fare just went up by 20%. If you are in Manchester or Birmingham, Uber has dodged the bullet. It is a postcode lottery of taxation that satisfies absolutely no one. The host's final blow, asking if the fiscal black hole had just got a few £100 million deeper because the Chancellor got outplayed by an app on her own phone. The silence was deafening. This failure isn't just about taxis, it is symptomatic of a government that is increasingly being viewed as out of touch and clinically unpopular. If you think the Uber situation is a one-off, look at the wider context. We are entering 2026 with some of the most dire approval ratings in British political history. Rachel Reeves is currently sitting on a net favourability of -59. To put that in perspective, that is lower than Kwasi Kwarteng after the mini-budget that nearly broke the pension funds. Even Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson at their lowest points weren't this disliked by the general public. People don't just disagree with her. According to focus groups, they find her uncaring and untrustworthy. The taxi tax was marketed as a way to fund the NHS and cut the cost of living. Instead, it is fueling inflation in London and raising precisely £0 elsewhere. It is the political equivalent of trying to catch rain with a sieve. The public sees a chancellor who talks about hard choices while making choices that are easily circumvented by any company with a decent legal team. It reinforces the image of a Labour Party that is congenitally ignorant of how enterprise actually functions, as Andrew Neil so eloquently put it recently.
God help you, Rachel Reeves, and particularly God help you, Rachel Reeves, when you get in a taxi. When you next need a taxi, or when any of your family members next need a taxi, let's see what the taxi driver has to say, if maybe they even stop to pick you up. You are killing their industry. You are killing people's freedoms. You are taking away the choice for a pensioner to be able to go to the market or to get to a hospital meeting appointment. You are taking away from disabled people freedom. You are taking away from children the opportunity to get to school. You are enforcing a way of life that suits Rachel Reeves and no others. Where's your bus infrastructure? Where's your train infrastructure? Oh no, they're on strike, aren't they? Yeah. So the tube, that's gone really well, hasn't it? So the tube drivers are striking, costing the British economy millions and billions of pounds, yet we are going to tax those that pick up the shit from the tube strikes. Yep, we're going to put 20% on them. I'd love to see what a cab driver has to say to Rachel Reeves when she's sat in the back. She won't be allowed to turn the microphone off or the speakers off. She will have to listen. And I hope they do tell her.
So what happens next when your flagship revenue raiser turns out to be a damp squib? The Treasury is now in damage control mode. A spokesperson tried to spin it by saying they are protecting tax revenue, but the markets and the voters aren't buying it. There is already talk of a spring statement in March where Reeves will have to find more black holes to fill because her current bucket is full of holes. The suspense is no longer about whether the economy will grow, but about which niche tax the government will try to invent next to cover for the ones that failed. The obliteration of Rachel Reeves on live air wasn't just a tough interview, it was a reality check. You cannot run a modern economy on good vibes and fairness slogans if you don't understand the basic mechanics of how businesses operate. Uber has proven that in the war for attention and revenue, the state is currently a horse and cart trying to chase a Tesla. The British Report will be here to watch the wheels come off. Thank you for watching.